to another Stamp with Amy K YouTube Live, and today I'm going to show you how I made a card with the beautiful Thistle stamp set bundle. This is a new one from the Stampin' Up! January to April 2023 mini catalog, and it is a really pretty one. And I mean, who knew thistles could be beautiful? But I actually think they are. I think this, I don't know, I really like this this bundle a lot. And I used a little bit of the Celebration Designer Series paper with it as well. So I've got the Dainty Flowers 12 by 12 Designer Series paper that I use a little bit on the background. And we'll talk a little bit more about all that good stuff as we get going with the video. So, hey, Carol, thanks for hopping in today. I appreciate you being here. All right, so this is the card we're going to be making. It's probably a little busier than a typical one for me. I wasn't sure on the background papers and kind of did a little mix of things and decided that I thought it looked okay. So I ran forward with it. So hey, Karen and Melanie and Gwen, thanks for hopping in today. I appreciate you being here. So, and they are Scottish thistles. I knew there were some sort of specific thistles. They don't quite look like the thistles that we had around when I was a kid that we had to, you know, pull up and take out of the garden and such. So, all right. So this is the stamp set. Again, like I said, it's a beautiful bundle. It got, you know, some pretty images in it. They're very easy to color, and I'll show you how I did that a little bit as we are going through the process of making this. Got some good sentiments in it. Love that there's a little background image. Hopefully you can see that on here, sort of a little, I don't know, dashed looking background. So, and then there are some dies that coordinate with it, and they're also called the Beautiful Thistle dies, which they, you know, now we're naming them the same thing, which is awesome. So the ones that are open, this one and this one, cut out the stamped images here in the stamp set. And then there are some where you can kind of build your own thistle. You can do it out of die cut pieces, which is kind of cool as well. I didn't use the die cut thistle pieces. Well, I mean, I used the ones for the stamped images, but I did not use the additional pieces of my card today. But I'll be playing with those, I'm sure, at some point soon. All right, let me set those aside. A couple other things that I did use. The framed florets dies, that's where the ovals came from on the background of this. And I do love these, and I love that we have some ovals. So, hey, Nora, it's kind of a drizzly, yucky day here in New Jersey, too. And it started out, it was warm. It was like 53 degrees this morning when I got the kids up and out for school, and now the temperature is dropping and it's cold outside. So, hey, Elise and Drew, glad you are joining today. So, I did use the larger of the oval dies from the frame florets, and then this smaller one that's got the little dashed lines on it. So, use both of those dies for this. So, let me set that aside. And then the final thing that I used, of course, is my favoriteest die set ever, which is the stitched rectangle dies. And I used this one, which I call it the smallest of the wide rectangle dies. It's the one that measures, I don't know, about 1 inch by about 2 3/8 inches. So these are my narrow rectangles. These are my wide rectangles in my world. That's what I call them. So that helps me to keep track of which ones I'm using. So, hey, Margaret, I'm glad you're here, and Jean as well. So a couple things before we get going. Celebration has started, if you are not familiar with that. Stampin' Up! Has a really awesome thing that they do early in the year. This year it's just January and February, where you earn free products for every $50 increment that you spend during that time that Celebration is going on. So there is a beautiful brochure full of pretty new things that you can get for free with an order of 50 or greater. Let me know if you have questions about that. There are a couple of items, the Beautifully Happy stamp set and the Dandy Designs Designer Series paper, that are available with orders of $100 or greater. So if you do a $150 order, you can kind of mix and match and do one of the 100, one of the 50. You can do 3 of the 50, so however you want to do it. And then there is a host exclusive set that is available for anyone who either hosts a party of with $300 or greater merchandise, or that has an actual order themselves of $300 or greater. You'll get this awesome host stamp set, and it's totally free. So let me know if you have any questions about any of that. So Lonnie says it's dark and rainy in Southwest Florida. I've heard you guys have had some kind of, you know, well, I guess it was mostly Georgia, Alabama that had that horrible weather yesterday. My goodness, what a mess. Tornadoes and yucky, scary weather down there. So glad y'all are doing okay. So last thing before we get started on the card, Stampin' Up! During Celebration also has this awesome joining promotion going on, where you have 3 different options for joining. So if you join as a demonstrator and to get that demonstrator discount yourself, during the months of January and February, during celebration, they have two options where you pay $129 and you get to pick $175 of whatever merchandise it is, your favorite things from Stampin' Up! So you get to pick $175. And you also are going to get either the boho blue or the white mini Stampin' cut in an emboss machine. So that is $129, or you can pay the regular $99 and you still get to pick $175 worth of free Stampin' Up! Merchandise of your choice, which is an awesome deal. I mean, that's a ton of free stuff. So the kit ships for free. You're going to get some catalogs in there, and then from there you can just order and get the discount for yourself, or do as much or as little as you want with it. So that is awesome. So let me know if you have questions about joining. The details are on my blog, which is stampwithamyk.com, and you can see all the details out there. So all right. Let's go ahead and get started on the card. So I have got an old olive card base. This, I actually ended up with two of them cut the same way, which is, my standard way that I do cards, which is the top fold. This card will also definitely work with your side fold, your book fold card, which is your 8.5 by 5.5, is at 4 1/4 down the side. You can certainly use it for that. But my card base is 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it at 5.5 right across the middle. So whichever your preferred card base is, you can definitely use either one. So Sandy says cloudy in Idaho and temperatures are 40. Oh, that's kind of warm for you guys. I don't know. We're dropping. We're supposed to get down into the low 30s tonight. So brr, it's cold. So, all right, using a little bit of multi-purpose liquid glue, and I'm going to adhere a piece of, see, this is why I don't use liquid glue, because look at me. I'm not even trying to do anything difficult, and I end up with it stuck all over my fingers. So let me wipe this on here, so hopefully I don't end up with my fingers stuck to everything. So this is the Dainty Designs Designer Series paper, and this is one of the free papers that you can get from Celebration if you order $50 or greater during the months of January or February. So it's really pretty paper. It's a beautiful pack. If you haven't seen it, you need to just get it because you'll love it. So I love that it's got kind of florally or greenery images on one side, and then the flip side of almost all the papers is kind of a neutral sort of, this one was the polka dots, the fresh freesia polka dots. So, all right. Next up, I did some of the die cutting ahead of time because it's kind of boring to sit and watch. Again, I used the framed florets dies and just did some die cutting. This is old olive cardstock, and I used, let me pull the die set back over here again, used the larger of the ovals, the one that's got the kind of, I don't know, almost looks like a cameo to me on it. I'm not sure if that's what it was designed to look like, but that die I used to cut the old olive cardstock. And we're just going to take a little bit of liquid glue, and I'm going to try hard not to stick myself to the paper or end up with too big of a mess on here. Just going to dab on a little bit of multi-purpose liquid glue sort of around the edges of this and anywhere where it's a little bit thicker. And we're going to be doing some layering of things over the top of this, so we don't need to have tons of glue on it to get it, as long as it sticks down. We'll do some layering over the top so everything will be held in place no matter what. And then I'm going to try to aim to get this centered. So what I'm going to try to do is find close to the center of my card base. And then this is obviously the center here. So I'm just going to take it and line it up and try to get it. Again, it doesn't need to be perfectly centered, but just generally aiming for center with it. And then I'm going to hold it down for just a second since I used the liquid glue to give it a second to adhere. All right, and I'm going to set that aside. These pieces I also cut with that same set of dies, and actually it was the very same die, so it was the larger of the oval dies here. And rather than keeping the frame of it like I did with the old olive, I took the centers of these two die cuts. Again, this is from the I was going to call it framed florets, but that is not. That's the name of the die set. The Dainty Flowers Designer Series paper is where this came from. And then this is just white vellum. And just did it to kind of mute it a little bit underneath the flowers. I don't know. Just wanted to give it a little different look. You certainly, if you don't like the vellum over it, you certainly could go with just the Designer Series paper. But I thought the vellum added a nice little touch and kind of gave it a little bit of a, I don't know, muted look, I guess is what I'll say. And when I was putting the liquid glue around here, I tried to be really careful to keep it, first of all, out to the edges and second, not very much, so that it didn't end up oozing underneath and getting all over the place. As I'm adhering these two die cuts together, again, this is just white vellum is what I cut, and a little bit of the Dainty Flowers Designer Series paper. I'm going to press on this for just a second. And as you can see, assuming you can see it in the camera, you can see the glue. So you want to make sure that you're careful and keep it out to the edges so that hopefully you don't end up with any glue globs showing through when you adhere the two together like this. So then I'm going to take my this die cut, which I cut again with the framed florets dies. I used the little dashed die in here. And this is that beautiful shimmer 12 by 12 specialty paper that is in the new mini catalog, and this is the gold version of it, and it is so pretty. It's gold, soft succulent, and fresh freesia, I think, are the colors in it, and it's beautiful, beautiful paper. Again, it's just got a nice fine shimmer. I guess it's called fine shimmer paper. I'm sorry, not just shimmer paper. It's fine shimmer paper, and it's beautiful. So I definitely, if you don't have any of that, just get some of that, because again, I just don't want you to be sad that you've missed out. And it's beautiful paper, and you're going to love it, and it's, you know, perfect for everything. I think you could even probably use it for Christmas because it's got the gold in it, but it'll work for everything. So, all right, again, a little bit of the multi-purpose liquid glue, and then I'm going to take that and I'm just going to adhere my, let's get this on here straight. There we go. My die cut frame right over the top of the layered frame with the vellum on it. And this one I do want to make sure I'm holding for just a second because I want to make sure that it's stuck down really well with the liquid glue, just giving it a second to dry around here. All right, I think we're good on that. And then I'm going to flip it over and we'll put some Stampin' Dimensionals on the back. And sort of randomly around here. Hey, Carol, thanks for hopping in. And Barbara's here from Kentucky as well. Glad you're joining today. All right, sticking these together here with, or sticking on some Stampin' Dimensionals. These are my half Stampin' Dimensionals. They come in, they're a whole size, and I actually just take my scissors and cut right down the center of each row to give me two instead of one out of each dimensional. And I know some people don't like that. And you could certainly use the larger ones if you prefer, but I like the littler ones a lot of times for sticking sentiments and things on. I think they work a little bit better, but that's just my personal opinion. All right, so then I'm going to take this die cut, and we're just going to center it over the die cut that I've got stuck on the background. So there we go. Love the look of the thistle images. It's really pretty. It's, like I said, thistles aren't something that I would normally call pretty, but these are. So, all right, I've got a piece of basic white cardstock, and then I've got the larger thistle image as well as a smaller one. Just so you know, I did stamp, color, and die cut the smaller ones ahead of time, again, because it's the same process to color it, and I didn't figure you wanted to sit and watch me color and color and color and then die cut and color some more and, you know, all that. So I'm using Tuxedo Black Memento ink to ink up the thistle image, and we're going to be stamping it on basic white cardstock. And hopefully we'll get a nice image the first time. And then if not, we'll flip it over and do it again. So, hey, Linda and Naomi, I'm glad you're here. Looks like everybody's kind of having some gloomy weather today. So, all right, looks like we got a good image. I'm going to grab some of my Stampin' Blends here. So I have Fresh Freesia and Old Olive are the colors that I've got here. And I'm just going to use the light and dark of both. I think I'm actually going to start with the Old Olive first. And I'm starting with the light. That's the way I prefer to color with them. Again, if you prefer to start with the dark, you certainly can. I find that for me, it works better. I can put the light sort of over everything and then come back in with the dark, add a few accents, and then come back in with the light and blend it. So that's usually how I do my coloring. But if you have a different way that works better for you, you certainly can do it however. But that's just my tip when I do it, and when people are just learning how to use them, that's usually how I recommend you do it. And also, if you haven't used the Stampin' Blends, they are alcohol-based, and they're super easy to color with. So, Stampin' Up! From, just want you. Oh, whoops! Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, I see that now that you say that. Yes, yes. Good heavens. Yeah. Sometimes my fingers don't always match up with what my brain wants it to say. So thank you for pointing that out. I will fix it as soon as we get off the video. Goodness. So, all right. Just adding, again, just coloring down the stem of the thistle here. Again, just have the light Old Olive Stampin' Blends marker. And then I'm going to come back in. The nice thing about this image, and floral images in general when you color them, is a lot of times the shading on them is just in a place that already has a little bit of shading. So I tend to look at the little lines where Stampin' Up! Has put them on the stamp, and that's where I add a little bit of dark. So I assume that that's a shaded area. So I just come back in and put in a little bit of the dark ink with the Stampin' Blends marker. And again, I'm using Old Olive for this one. And we'll put in a little bit of dark over here, probably a little dark under there, maybe a little over here, a little bit down here towards the center. And then down the stem, I'll sort of do the same thing, just sort of look at where some of the lines are and where I think a dark shadow might be. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm not, but I just color it so it looks good to me. Probably should add a little bit of dark on that one as well. And then the pollinators love, oh, really? I had no idea. I know I don't like thistles because they're pokey and they kind of take over spaces if you don't sort of take care of them. But good to know that bees like them, so that'll be my excuse for having them be around, is I'm helping the bees. So, all right. So then again, I'm coming back in with my light marker and just sort of pulling up a little bit of the darker color and blending it just ever so slightly. Try not to over blend it, but if you do, there's always the color lifter. And then again, coming back in and just pulling a little bit of the dark ink out into some of these areas on my stamped image that are a little bit further down the stems and things. All right, I think we're going to call that good on the green. And then I've got fresh freesia. And we're going to do the light first. Just putting it on the florally part of the thistle. All right. And then when I'm doing it again, when I'm trying to get the color on fairly quickly like this, I usually kind of do the outline first, and then I can fill in the inside pretty quickly with the solid color. All right, so there we go. We got that on there, and then I've got my dark fresh freesia. And again, I'm assuming down towards the bottom is going to be a little bit darker. Because there would likely be a shadow in there. And then I'm just going to draw a few lines here and there throughout the rest of the image to give it hopefully a little bit more of a 3D effect. So, you haven't ordered it yet, Carol? Goodness, go order it now. So, it's a really pretty bundle. And like I said, it's kind of hidden in the back of the catalog and not one they've got a lot of samples with. So, but you still need to get it. So, all right, so let's grab the die here. Again, this is the beautiful Thistle die that coordinates with it. I'm just going to take this over to my die cutting machine. So I'm going to be off screen and away from the camera for a second, so my voice will fade out, but I'll come back, I promise. So hang on just a second, and I will get this die cut. All right. Almost got it. All right. I think we're good. Naomi doesn't have it either. Goodness, it's a really pretty set, and I like the sentiments in it too. So it's a good one. So just get it. Like I said, my thought on it always is just get it. If you're questioning it, then you're never sad later that you didn't get it. So there's nothing worse than missing out on a stamp set bundle and not being able to pick it up when you want it. So you ordered it this morning. I'm glad, Karen. You're gonna love it. You'll have fun. All right. So I have got the larger Thistle image, and then two of the smaller ones that I cut and I stamped and colored the same way with the same colors. Just had done them ahead of time, so you didn't have to sit and watch me color all of that. So I liked the way it all turned out, and I feel like the thistles I have seen, I think, are similar in color to this. Maybe not quite as purple, but you know, I'm not a gardening expert, so I may be totally wrong on the colors, but I think this is fairly close to what an actual thistle looks like. All right, I've got glue dots on here, except I think I put this one down just a little too low. Come on, little glue dot. There we go. We're going to move that up a little bit. And I'm going to take this, and we're just going to adhere it. Let me make sure we're all going to land here in the same spot, the spot I want it to be. Just want this one peeking out a little bit, and then I'm going to adhere the larger one on. And with a couple glue dots again. trying to get it mostly towards the right-hand side and down the stem just a little bit so that I get the glue dot actually stuck to something and not just floating in midair. And then sometimes when you mail them, if the glue dot is stuck somewhere where it shouldn't be, then it ends up sticking strangely to the card front, and you know, nobody wants that. So, all right, so we're going to take this one and we'll stick it up here a little bit higher. And then we will do the third one and just layer it right over the top of the other two. So again, I'm going to put one under the main flower and then put one a little bit higher up here on the stem so that hopefully I end up with it stuck to the card front and not just floating around. And I think we'll put that one right there. All right. Next up, I have got some linen thread, and I'm just going to tie a little bow. And when I tie my bows that are just loose and floating like this, I make what I'm right off screen, aren't I? Sorry. I make what I call the rabbit ears. So I've got my two loops, and I cross them one over the other, tuck it in, and then pull it. So mine's a pretty basic bow, but it does allow me to then, you know, pull the ends a little bit and decide how long I want everything to be and how big I want the bow to be and all that stuff. So, and you can always trim bows down, but it's hard to add to them. So I usually tend to leave the little, the legs of the bow, ends of the bow, a little bit longer. You can always trim them off. So, all right, so I think we're done messing around with that, and I'll grab a glue dot and stick that bow on. And I think we'll just sort of stick it generally right down here and do it at a little bit of an angle because I'm going to put my sentiment over the top of it. So let me set that aside as I get ready to do the sentiment, and I will try not to spill embossing powder all over everything. I've got a piece of fresh freesia cardstock. Again, I don't know what size this is. I didn't measure it. It was just a little scrap that I had. And then I've got the sentiment from the beautiful Thistle stamp set in Versamark ink. And I'm just going to ink this up really well with Versamark and stamp it on the fresh freesia cardstock. All right, and then I'm going to close up my ink pad so that hopefully I don't, and I forgot to use the embossing buddy. Oh well. If it doesn't turn out, we'll flip it over and use the embossing buddy. Then I've got gold embossing powder from the Metallics embossing powders, and just sprinkled that over the top, shook it off. And we'll get the spoon out of here and close this up before I start up the heat tool, because the embossing powder does sometimes go flying if you accidentally put the heat tool in the wrong spot. So, all right, so we got the Stampin' Up! Heat tool, which has 2 levels on it. There's a level 1 setting for drying. So if you're doing something like watercoloring or just using an ink that takes a little bit longer and you want to speed it up, you can use the level 1 setting for drying. And then level 2 setting is for heat embossing. And it does take a minute for the heat tool to warm up. To the point where it can heat emboss. So that's why I'm, you know, yakking and talking about the heat tool, waiting for it to heat up a little bit. So, all right, let me flip it towards the project here and see if we're ready yet. I'm going to give it another second because it didn't start to turn yet, and I don't want to dry the embossing powder. I want to make sure it actually embosses it. And I just sent all my little Stampin' dimensional covers flying across my stamp room when I did that. So that's always fun. And it'll be stuck all over the dog. So, all right, just using the heat tool to heat this until it's smooth and shiny. And then turn it off and let it cool. Just a second. You can actually smear embossing powder if you pick it up and, you know, rub across it or try to die cut it immediately. It does take just a second to cool down so that you don't smear it when you run it through your embossing machine. So I have got my stitched rectangle dies, and again I'm using what I call the smallest of the wide rectangles, and we're just going to take that and die cut this sentiment, which I love the way it looks all heat embossed on the purple. So I will be back in 1 second when we run this through the die cutting machine. All right, there we go. And I'll put my die back before I lose track of that and get rid of the paper. All right, got my card back here again and my sentiment, and I'm just going to grab a couple Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm actually going to stick the Stampin' Dimensionals on the card front rather than putting them on the back of the sentiment, just so that I can make sure that I end up with them on either side of my linen thread, so I don't end up with the sentiment being kind of strange and lumpy and whatever on the card front. That's just a little, whoop. That was not what I meant to do. There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. But that's just one little trick that you can do to make sure that your sentiment doesn't end up with it actually stuck right in the center of that bow, and then there's a weird bump in your sentiment, and nobody wants bumpy sentiments. So, all right, so let me stick the sentiment on here. All right. And I think I'm going to leave the ends of the bow as it is. I thought about trimming them a little, but I kind of like them a little bit longer, so I think we're going to leave that as it is. And then the last thing that I added on the card front was a couple of the brushed metallic adhesive back dots. On my original card, I had some gold dots, so I just used those. I think they're bronze. I don't even know what the name of this color is, but I think they also coordinate nicely. So because it picks up the green tone, I think, in it. So I'm going to use these on this card, and I'm just going to put two of them on. We're going to do one of the larger and one of the smaller, and the card front is going to be all done. If I can get there we go. I never bring over my take your pick tool. One of these days I'll have everything I need to make the card, and then I'll probably forget what I was doing. All right, so that's it for the card front. On the inside of the card, I kept it also pretty simple. Just did a little basic stamping. I've got the smaller of the two Thistle images, and we're going to stamp that in Tuxedo Black Memento ink as well. Just going to ink it up well here. And stamp it along the edge of a piece of basic white cardstock. This piece is cut to about 4 by 5 1/4, so it should fit nicely inside my card, unless I've messed up the cutting. So I appreciate that, Melanie. Thanks so much. And then again, just going to take my light Old Olive Stampin' Blends marker and add a little bit of color to the bottom of it, down where the stem and the leaves and all that stuff are. And, all right, then I'm going to grab the dark Stampin' Blends Old Olive, and again, just go back in here and just put little touches of the dark down towards the bottom and in places where I think there might be a little shadow. And probably run down the stem a little bit, a couple of the leaves, or thorns, or whatever they're supposed to be. I don't know if those are thorns or leaves, but I'm calling them leaves because leaves seem prettier than thorns. So, all right. Doing a little bit of just blending the two inks together a little bit. And then I'm going to grab my Fresh Freesia Stampin' Blends again. And again, just going to color in the top of the flower here with the light first, and then I'll come back in with the dark. All right. And again, just going to put a little bit down here of the dark towards the bottom where I feel like there will be shadows, and then just put a few little lines here and there. And I'm not even being careful or really paying any attention to where I'm putting the dark lines, just adding a few in here and there. And then I see a few spots where I missed with the light, so I'm just going to come back and sort of blend and add a little bit more of the light in. And that's it for the inside of the card. So super simple. Let me get a little stamp and seal, and we will stick the card together, and we'll be all done for the day today. So I appreciate you being here. Hopefully you have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully all this crazy weather slows down a little bit. Hopefully everybody in California is staying safe, because goodness, it looks like you guys have got a mess out there as well. So, all right, grab the bone folder and do a little crease at the top, and that's it. So this is a card I made ahead of time with the little gold dots on it. This one has got the bronze or whatever color those are dots on it instead. So pretty much the same card, and I love the set. Hopefully you love the bundle as well. Pick it up during Celebration, and it'll count towards your free gifts that you get from Stampin' Up! During Celebration for every 50 that you order. Let me know if you have questions about this. I'll be posting all the details again on my blog tomorrow, which is stampwithamyk.com. I'll link back to it and put a note in the description of this video linking over to the blog post, so you can go find all the details, all the cardstock cuts, the PDF tutorial, all that good stuff that go along with it tomorrow. So thanks for joining. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll plan to be live back here around 2 o'clock Eastern Time on Tuesday, and then again next week Friday around 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Chat with you all soon.